What up, guys? Today we got a question from Brian, who has this idea that I think a lot of us have in jiu-jitsu or grappling or fighting, MMA, whatever it might be, but that we've eventually learned that we're mistaken, right? Because it's an idea that I think pretty much every fighter is going to eventually learn at some point, competitor, martial arts, whatever you want to say. But basically, Brian is getting ready to compete as a blue belt, right? And he's nervous. And he says that, he competed a little bit at white belt, shaky results, and he's getting ready for blue belt. And again, he's nervous about it. And his whole thing is, he says that in the gym, he's pretty darn good. But when he gets out there to compete in the match, he says the nervousness, the jitters, all that stuff, the anxiety before the match get to him, and he always underperforms. And so in his thinking, if he could just get rid of the fear and the nervousness, he would be so much better. And so he sends the Chewster the message that he would like to get rid of the fear and he would like some ideas on how to do that. So, brother, thank you for the question. So again, you think this is a good idea. You think if only you could get rid of the fear that everything would be better, right? I would suggest that you are probably mistaken. Now, there are some people that do well like that, but I would say that you're mistaken because from my experience and pretty much every fighter I've ever talked to, learned from, read about, anything, they all come to the same agreement that I'm going to share with you in just a second. Now, I do want to share a story with you real quick about a boxer named Floyd Patterson. So if you don't know like old school boxing, I love old school boxing, some of my favorite stuff. And Floyd Patterson, he had a mean left hook. My favorite punch when I was training boxing was a left hook. So I really liked watching him box. But he was trained by Customato. That's the same guy that trained Mike Tyson. And he also used that same peekaboo style boxing stance and boxing style, and fun guy to watch if you want to go back and watch some of his highlights. But in 1959, he fought a guy, I've got my notes right here, he fought a guy named Johansson, his last name was Johansson, and he ended up losing the fight, right? I think got knocked down like 7 times in the third round, they stopped the fight. Later on, they reflected on the event, and they asked him, they said, like, what happened, whatever, and he said that basically everything was good. His training camp was good. All that stuff was where it should have been, but he kind of implied that the thing that was missing, this secret ingredient that he was missing to be at his best during that fight was fear. He said he wasn't afraid, he wasn't nervous. And he later reflected, saying, quote, every fighter should be a little afraid of what could happen to him because fear makes your mind sharper. When you have nothing to fear, your mind becomes dull. And he went back later on and beat Johansson, I think it was in the 5th round, and became the first person to ever regain a heavyweight title at the time. He knocked him out in the 5th round. I think they had to like wake the guy up like 5 minutes or something. It took a long time. So anyway, he won later on, and he came to this conclusion that you need some fear, right? You need a little bit of that edge, that nervousness before the big thing to like get you to be at your best, to focus yourself and make you sharp. And this is something I've come to the same realization about. I remember as a purple belt, I had this weird situation where, not a weird situation, but I thought it was a blessing, turned out not to be that way, where I was competing as a purple belt. I had just had a couple MMA fights, and so doing this jiu-jitsu tournament didn't seem like that big of a deal, because in my mind, I'm thinking, well, the worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to submit me. They're not going to knee me in the face. They're not going to like elbow me. They're not going to knock me out. So, I mean, submission, who cares? And I had absolutely no nerves for the match that I had coming up. None whatsoever. And I remembered in that moment, I was like, I don't feel any nerves. Ha! I finally conquered the anxiety, because just like you, I thought this anxiety made me worse. I hated having the nerves before the matches. And so finally, there are no nerves. I'm just going to go out there and compete, and it's going to be great. Well, I went out there and competed, and it wasn't so great. I got smoked by this dude, got caught in a submission in like a minute. So again, wasn't the best idea. I later on went against that guy again, about a year and a half later, and we went against each other again. That time, kind of like the Floyd Patterson story, I had fear in me, I had a little nervousness, and I beat him by submission. So again, this idea that we want to get rid of the fear, it's not a good one. Pretty much every fighter, martial artist, anybody I've ever talked to over the years, we've all come to the same conclusion. In the beginning, it really wrecks you because you're not used to it. It's like this unwieldy power that you're not used to controlling. But then what happens is eventually you sort of get comfortable with it. And if you can get comfortable with it, it becomes a blessing to you because it makes you sharper. The fear that's associated with those matches before the matches coming up, even during, it focuses you in. It makes you sharper. Because you should have a little fear about what could happen. I mean, even in a jiu-jitsu competition, sure, you may just get submitted, but I mean, someone could dump you on their damn neck. So you have to have a little fear about the situation and what it can bring. And even that, this stuff is very meaningful, right? Because we go to competitions and it means something to us. So nobody wants to go out there and underperform. That sucks, and you should be afraid of underperforming. Wins and losses happen, but again, we want to go out there and be our best. And so again, my idea to you, one, is to not look at this as a negative thing. These nerves is a negative thing. Don't worry about getting rid of them. That's not what you want to do. What you want to do is you want to learn how to harness them. And I've talked about this recently, but I'll say it again. The way that you do that is you get reps. You get into those competition matches and you get comfortable with it and you get reps. You see what it feels like and you start to embrace it. There's not really a way to circumvent that. You have to experience it for yourself. You can't just think your way out of this. The second thing is to get a damn good warm-up. Make sure that when you step on the mat, you're already breathing, well, you don't want to be breathing heavy when you step on the mat, but you will have wanted to be in a situation where you get your heart rate up, you're breathing heavy, you're sweating. It's like you've been through a match before you have your first match. You want to get on the mat and feel like you had a roll already. And if they have a warm-up mat, you can even consider that. Grab a partner and get a good roll in. Not hard roll, but get a good flow roll going and get the jitters out. It'll shake off the nervous feelings. It'll get rid of that weakness that you have in your grips and your legs. And with that first wind out of you, then you'll go out to the match and it'll be like your second or third roll in the gym when you start to feel your best, right? Because nobody generally has their best rounds the first round. So anyway, that's the idea to chew on, brother. Hopefully that helps you, Brian, and I'll talk to you guys next time.